It will probably show up in a few seconds if everything is set up correctly here. Can you already see me on the screen? No, not yet. Okay. It's going now? Okay, good. So that means that if they're there, they're going to be able to see what we're doing here. All right. Okay. So today we get to maybe one of the important topics in which we are thinking of IT as a way of better connecting to customers. Right? In fact, after we discussed in our previous class that model that showed the three vectors through which companies could exploit the use of information technology in order to have a smoother contact with customers, suppliers, and also knowledge and developing a good and sensible knowledge management. Now we'll start dealing with each one of these sides of the, let's say, the value stream specifically, right? And today our focus is looking from the company towards the end customer. We are usually, depending on where we are in the value chain, we may not be the last link before the end customer. Usually, if we're thinking about physical products, we have a retailer that is the organization that has direct contact with the end customer. And then the retailer buys products from maybe wholesalers or distributors. And these wholesalers or distributors buy them from a manufacturer. And the manufacturer buys supplies or raw materials from from their own suppliers. So there is what we call, usually in marketing, they call it the value chain. In operations management, in operations logistics and everything, they call it the supply chain. So if you're ever involved with the, let's say, the automobile industry, they will be talking about the supply chain all the time. Because the supply chain is this link of different organizations that all together put a product that an end customer buys at the end of the chain. And I keep telling you that the only agent that has money in their pockets for to feed the whole supply chain or the whole value chain is the end customer. If the end customer doesn't buy the products or services that are being sold, nothing else will work, or at least nothing else will work in the, I can't even say in the long run, right? Maybe even in the short run, things may happen because companies are sometimes buying to stock, but they only buy things to have in inventory because they believe that at some stage those products, and here we're talking about when we're stocking products. We're not able to stock services, right? So I'm talking more about the traditional supply chain. You only stock products or raw materials or whatever because you have an expectation that at some stage the end customer is going to put his hands in the pockets and buy your product or buy the product that is developed or produced by this value chain or the supply chain, right? So we have to, regardless of where we are in the supply chain, we should always be concerned with what is happening there at the end of the really what we call downstream. We use these terms downstream and mainstream and upstream because we refer to what happens in a river, for example. A river, if we are anywhere in a river, the downstream is closer to the ocean and upstream is closer to the mountains where the river starts, right? So we got that reference from there. And in logistics and supply chain management, we always talk, we're looking now we're looking upstream. That means that we're looking to our suppliers. If we're looking downstream, we are looking at our customers. And we always have to think, if we don't get, if we don't meet the needs or the wishes of the end customers, nothing else happens. So everyone in the supply chain should have, as part of its business, this mission of understanding what the end customer wishes. Right? On next week, we will not have classes on Friday. We'll have a class on Tuesday evening. It's going to happen through the same channel here, right? So you just have to connect to YouTube. But of course, what we will try to do then is to simulate a supply chain or a value chain in which each one of you will take a role in the decision making of, it's not going to be what you buy, but the amounts that you buy to make sure that you meet your customers' expectations, right? So we'll be doing that through this YouTube channel as well. I will still be here on Tuesday evening. I won't be here on Friday, but we couldn't do it in the actual time of our class because I will be flying, right? Otherwise, we could do it at that time. But anyway, and there, when we do that simulation, we will understand the importance of knowing what the end customer needs. And in fact, what we will try to do there is make it difficult for you to know, unless you are the retailer. Of course, the retailer is selling directly to the end customer, so the retailer always has this good information about what the end customer is buying right now. But everyone else is basing their decisions according to the orders that they get from their customers, and their customers are not the end customer. So we'll have an interesting discussion after the simulation, because I will show you that the fact that most of you not having direct contact with the end customer will probably make some poor decisions in our simulation. Right? Companies do never want to make poor decisions, because poor decisions usually imply spending money in an unwise way. It's actually what they would say in companies is throwing money in the garbage bin, right? So companies don't want to do that, although they do it many times because they take poor decisions. What these guys, I have I thought I had already the class for today. No, the class for today is Downstream the value chain. So this is it. And the two papers that we will be discussing today are two papers. Well, one still from the 90s. McKenna wrote this Real Time to Marketing in 1995. If I am still alive and teaching IT classes in 20 years from now, I will be still referring to that paper. It's a simple paper, not very long, easy to read, but the message that is conveyed there seems to still not having been fully understood by most companies in different value chains. Basically, what Mr. McKenna in this real-time marketing paper says is that information systems and all the information technology that we have today, and that we already had in the 90s, of course, at a previous stage of development, can and should be used to make sure that we better understand the end customer, regardless of where we are in the supply chain, regardless of if we are the retailer, and of course the retailer can sell directly, so it's easier, or maybe much further upstream, the manufacturer or even the suppliers that feed the manufacturers with the raw materials that are required for the process, right? So we will be discussing this some 25 years old paper to start with. And then we will discuss a second paper, which is this Nambi-san and Nambi-san 2008 paper. So this is already more than 10 years old. Let's say this is probably more outdated than Mr. McKenna's paper. Because McKenna, when he was talking about the ways that we could build a dialogue, and let's say, maybe if I had to summarize this paper by saying just one sentence with respect to the intentions that McKenna had with his paper, I would say he was warning companies that they have to establish channels to build a dialogue with their customers, with their end customers, so that they know exactly what they need, right? So in 95, when McKenna was doing that, of course, the internet was in its infancy, at least to the uses that we make today for business. Well, mobile phones were already around, but they were definitely not smartphones. And so he was talking about this in a more philosophical way. This is why I think that it never gets outdated, because 100 years from now or 200 years from now, companies will still need to try and understand what their customers want, because customers are the ones paying for the product. So this keeps absolutely relevant. Nambi-san and Nambi-san came in 2008, and although I think that they were really inspired by the ideas that McKenna had already presented in his paper some 13 years before, they don't mention McKenna directly in their paper, right? It's not one of their direct references, at least. But what they do is precisely what McKenna was telling us to do. They use the possibilities of the internet and our technology infrastructure to build what they call virtual customer environments. And those virtual customer environments are virtual places where the dialogue can be established, right? So we will start here with McKenna's paper and discuss its main ideas. And then maybe a little later, we will get to the other paper. Okay, so what was let's say, the environment in 95, just so that we have a better understanding of the situation in which McKenna was, developing his ideas and proposing them to us. In 95, probably none of the companies that are really successful today in the internet were around. Google was born in 98, 99, I think. Facebook, I think it was 2004. Whoever else you think of came afterwards. The ones that came before, and there are a few that you could say Yahoo was already around before that. Yeah, okay, but Yahoo, who has ever studied Yahoo as a real success case? Okay, they're there, but they never understood McKenna's ideas the way some of the companies that came afterwards did, right? So McKenna was writing to companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and to whoever wanted to listen. This important thing that is the gold mine of any business is understanding the end customer. In fact, some companies have taken this so far that to the extent that now they don't even treat us as customers any longer. They understand us so well, they understand us better than we actually understand ourselves, that in many cases we became their product. They became companies that understand customers and that then sell this information to other less competent organizations in understanding their own customers that require such information. Yesterday we had here a speech of Professor Luis Celso, one of my colleagues at the IT department here, and he was talking about fake news. And when he was, discussing how fake news happened in the middle of the way, well, of course, he had to discuss how social networks work and everything. And he was then telling us about how Facebook, for example, has developed even studies to figure out matching that will happen through social networks. We're not talking about Tinder here, that is something really direct and more extreme, let's say. But he was telling us that there is some research that was done just checking how conversation happened in the timelines of people, and Facebook now is able to predict if that's going to be a match or not. Because what they have been doing is that they have been checking what people say to each other or how they like or any other, or show any other sort of emotion on the web. And at the same time, they have another information that is, well, I'm seriously connected, or I don't know how Facebook goes about that, but I've seen married and in a relationship. I don't know exactly the terms that they use. I hardly ever get into Facebook, but I find interesting. It's an interesting research project, right? You have this how would I call this variable that is your status, marital status, or at least, and you have several other variables that influence that variable, and they're even able to match that, and they claim that they figure out if there's going to be a match before the actual partners figure that out. They already know, because they have all the other information about us. So nowadays, there are companies that know us much better than we do ourselves. And so it may take us a month or two to figure out that we found a match in a social network, but probably Facebook knew it from the first day that we got connected somehow, and they already knew, well, this is going to happen later on. Of course, this is a little anecdote. It's they're probably still not that efficient, but that's the way they're going, and that's the way any company could. It's a little scary, but anyway, could be going in trying to understand their customers better by means of all the information that customers provide these companies with. One interesting thing is that, for example, if you go to a shoe store in downtown Curitiba and you look for shoes, you try all these different shoes that you see on the shelves, and you get out of the shop and you don't buy anything. There is no single information that is left behind, except if the salesperson is really good and transforms his or her observations into some remarks that go into decision making later. But let's say it's very unlikely that this knowledge that maybe that salesperson has, well, this guy tried everything he wanted to buy, he didn't buy. Why didn't he? It's maybe this person will build some knowledge and some understanding of the situation, but it's very unlikely that this knowledge will be somehow put into the systems and will be considered at a more strategic level of the organization. On the other hand, if we go to any shoe shop online, regardless of if we buy or not, there are log files that keep track of everything that we do there, where our eyeballs were focusing, how much time we spend on each screen, and so on and so forth. And all that data is really relevant, or can be really relevant if treated in the proper way for better understanding customers. This is why we've been talking so much about big data these days, because of course it's the amount of data that is being generated is crazy, and we need to develop better tools to analyze all this data if we want to make any sense of it. Otherwise, it's just a huge amount of data. But we're doing that. IT has a major role into helping organizations understand such data. And then, of course, there is the counterpart to big data that is just getting all these chunks of data. It is the analysis of it, and this is why we've been talking so much about data science these days, which is basically a beautiful new name for all the statistics methods that we have been using for so long in the past with less data, now with much more robust data sets. Okay, so if you read McKenna's paper, you'll see that he mentions the internet a couple of times, mainly in the introduction. But at that stage, the internet was still not a big thing, or at least not as big as it became later. But he insists on this idea that marketing, and he's a marketing guru. He's not an IT person. He's someone who comes from the marketing area. He says marketing will have to change itself radically. Marketing, he was not saying marketing in the future. He says marketing in the present, and present for him was 25 years ago, needs to desperately focus on using technology to go or to change that mentality of broadcasting that was typical of marketing, right? Broadcasting was the idea. We had a product, and then we had to convince people to buy that product. But this convincing process was a process in which we, the company, did all the talking, and the customer was silent at the other end. No feedback. The only feedback that companies got from these massive advertisement campaigns of the past was afterwards. Well, was our campaign impactful? Did we get more sales because of all that money that we put into, just having some advertisement in the middle of Jornal Nacional or any other and broadcasting that everyone is interested in, right? Broadcasting may have played its role in the past because it was impossible, at least using an industrial revolution or in an industrial revolution environment, it was impossible to deal with each customer on a personalized way. But then in the 80s and 90s, when we started having technology that allowed it for some level of customization and allowed us to talk to customers, to build this dialogue in a way that companies address sometimes thousands or millions of customers. And then these customers in the past that they couldn't answer back because there was simply no way of getting that information back. Now companies talk to customers, and customers talk back not to employees of those companies, or at least not directly. Most of the time they talk to systems. But systems collect those data, analyze those data, and even take decisions in real time that keep the dialogue happening and allow the customer to provide the next piece of important information that could make the organization more knowledgeable about what the customer real needs are. In this paper, McKenna discusses a few companies that he understood that already in the 90s were being able to build this dialogue with customers. One of them is Dell. We will be discussing Dell in our next class. Dell built a dialogue with their customers, reversing the logic of the computer or the desktop computing industry. In the past, although this industry was modular in the sense that a PC has been, since it was first designed by IBM in the 80s, it was a modular product, but it was modular because IBM had this understanding that several different organizations, several different companies could, knowing how to interface their products, could specialize in their own special abilities, in their own core abilities, core competencies, as it used to be said by Graeml and Prahalad. Each company could focus on their core competencies, but still having interfaces that were previously agreed on. You could build a product that could then be sold to customers. But IBM's concept was modular, mainly to facilitate or to make it easy for the suppliers to organize themselves. They hadn't still, when they developed the product originally, it didn't seem that they were concerned about providing the end customer with the possibility of getting all those modules separately and assembling their own computer, or at least having someone closer to downstream do that instead of the factory doing it. So the business of the IBMs, Compaqs, HPs, of the computer manufacturers of the 80s and early 90s was we have a modular product to make it easy to manufacture it. We assemble it and we send it to a retailer, and it's going to be at the shelf of a company where customers will go there and pick from the shelf. So they were wasting, according to Makina's idea, they were wasting this possibility of asking the customers what they needed. And one way of building that dialogue would be, for example, through the internet, asking the customer, how do you want your product to be assembled? What are your needs? Are you a gamer? If you're a gamer, you have some special requirements. Is there a gamer here in class? No? But you know what gamers need, right? What are the important issues in a computer for a gamer? Do they need a big screen? They definitely need performance, because the games today are games that have the same sort of resolution than a movie. So they need they probably need some. Well, I'm not a gamer. I'm definitely not a gamer. This is why I asked you, because I expected that you could. But they probably need some PC board that makes the presentation of screens faster. So they may even need a second processor for that to make things happen faster. Well, they definitely need, or sometimes they don't need, but it's fancy to have a fancy, a colorful keyboard, right? I have a 14-year-old son, and I mean, for him, more important than anything else in the computer is to have this impressive keyboard with lights flashing in all different colors and everything. It seems to be important for that game community somehow. They may not bother too much about having a nice mouse, but they need a joystick, or I don't know. Maybe this was not a very good example because of, but let's think of someone else, an architect. Right? They may not need a mouse, but they need a board in which they can sketch something and have that turn it. In reality, each one of us, or depending on not each one of us that individually, but there are different segments, there are different clusters of people that have different needs. And as we don't know exactly where those people are, it doesn't make much sense, or that was what Dell understood already in the 90s. It didn't make much sense to build a computer and put it on a shelf at a retailer, because then the customer didn't have any alternative than just buying whatever was there, right? Maybe they could have the choices between computer model 1, model 2, and model 3, and they would have to choose one of those three. That's not building the dialogue. You give the end customer very little opportunity to give you feedback. If instead you do what Dell did and turn the product or the sales of a computer as a product into an order, because the customer doesn't go directly to the retailer and buy whatever is there. The customer goes online, orders a product that is going to be built to meet those requirements that customer has. And when the customer provides that kind of information, that information is very useful for the organization, because other people that are somehow similar to that person will have sort of the same needs. So you start as, notice that you're the manufacturer, but you now have a way of knowing what the customer needs much better than you did before. Think IBM, Compaq, and HP that were let's say, the companies selling computers in the 80s and early 90s. They had the information that they could have from the customer was, well, computer module 1 is selling better than computer module 2, so maybe we should produce more module 1 than module 2 computers. But notice how weak that information is compared to what Dell started getting as information. Well, there's a segment of customers here that, and Dell could even say, and I don't even know why, but there's people that want a keyboard with lights in it. If he was not a gamer, if he didn't have gamers in his company, they could only start noticing that was something that customers needed or wanted after customers started telling them. So the idea is create channels and use technology for that, because when I say that the dialogue didn't exist during the Industrial Revolution, of course it existed before. Right? When art craftsmen in the Middle Ages had to build an armor or had to build shoes for the king, they would go to the palace and measure the king's fit in order to make a very personalized pair of shoes. That happened. That stopped happening when the Industrial Revolution happened, and the idea was we have to have shoes for everyone, not just for the king. Right? And by doing that, or in order to be able to do that, you had to do it very cheaply. So let's stop talking to the customer. Let's assume that all customers have feet that are either small, medium, or large. And let's have just 3 numbers, and the customer will have to, the customer, we don't want to know how the size of the customer's feet. The customer will have to adjust to our product. So it was that mentality that the customer adjusts to the product that led marketing to happen in a way that it was basically just advertising. Right? Another example that is given here by McKenna in this 1995 paper is an attempt by Levi's jeans, right, to manufacture jeans, customized jeans, to transform the sale of jeans from a built to stock, and then the customer goes to the retailer and buys it directly from there, into a built to order logic. Well, I have to say that Levi's was probably before its time in trying to do that in the 90s, right? Although here McKenna talks about that as a success project, it failed a few years later, and this is a discussion that we always have to do: is when good ideas fail, why do they fail? Right? There's always a reason for that. Right? But anyway, before talking about the failure of Levi's project, let's just discuss a little bit of why it was such a clever idea. From the customer's perspective, if you have the possibility of buying jeans that are made to order, which means that they are going to fit at your waist and they're going to fit your length, the length of your legs, and that they will basically look like they were made for you and not that you inherited your big brother's pants or whatever, it's much better, right? It has more value. For the customer, the value of having customized jeans was obvious, or apparently, at least if this didn't cost too much more. They claim here that Levi's was being able to sell a pair of jeans for well, the same price as a shop would sell plus $10, which may seem a lot for us Brazilians here when we convert our currencies. But it was something that they found acceptable for the American market, even at that stage, even 20 years ago. Right? So pay $10 more for jeans that was precisely made, customized, seemed a good proposition from the customer's perspective. The customer also had maybe other kinds of convenience. We never know. We have to understand if that's something that the customer values, but maybe being able to buy directly from their couch, right, or from home, instead of having to go to a shop to do that, may be an advantage. I never know if that's really an advantage because there are people that enjoy really going to the shop. So, but anyway, we could claim that was at least a convenience. For Levi's, it had a lot of benefits. First of all, it inverted the logic of the financing of production, because in general, in the manufacturing industry, when you produce goods, physical goods that are going to be sold in a retailer, you have to put all the money in advance, right? You forecast that the customer will be willing to buy your product, and then you put your money in advance to buy all the raw materials, to manufacture, to send to the place where you guess that the demand will happen, and then you wait and wish that the customer is going to buy. If you change that to a situation in which the customer orders the product, then it's a secure sale. You sell it before you have to produce it, at least to some extent. Of course, you may already have to have bought some or even all of the raw materials, but you still didn't commit labor, you didn't put people to work on that before, and you didn't risk manufacturing something that the customer is not going to buy afterwards, or that you have to sell at a discounted price because it was not necessarily what the customer wanted. So there was this huge advantage. And there was another advantage that is probably even bigger, and that only McKenna could see at that time, because I guess if many companies still don't see it 25 years later, he definitely was a visionary. Then that was when Levi's proposed this new business model. It was actually building the dialogue with the end customers, right? Because customers had to spend time first measuring themselves, or getting themselves measured, providing that information. That information was put in the system. So that it was almost like doing some, some of these marketing surveys in which you want to understand what customers want, but you're doing it with someone who first is being very sincere, because all the information that is given in this process is information that is going to be used to produce that product that the customer wants or needs, right? So it's very different to someone stopping you at the street and saying, "Do you have 5 minutes that I would like to have an interview with you?" And gee, whenever that happens to me, I start. If I see that there's someone doing that on the streets, I already go to the other side of the street, right? If they get me, I never. I just need to probably put some. I think I forgot to turn on the power supply. So let's do that quickly. Otherwise, we're going to be out of a broadcast very soon. Yeah, seems that we are fine now. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Okay, sorry for that. So we're just running out of battery in my notebook here. So what I was saying is, we don't like to be interviewed to provide companies with information about ourselves. We think that that's private, knowledge that they're getting about us, and mainly we think that they're going to use that against us. not in our favor many times, or at least they're going to use it for their own purposes, not for anything that would interest us if they catch us on the street to answer a survey, right? But when we are discussing, a customized product that we are buying, we're being very sincere. We're putting we're providing them with all the detail that they are asking us. And if we still think that there are things that they're not asking, it's good if they had an open form there for us, an open question where we can answer things that we haven't even been asked, we answer. So that's building the dialogue. It's making sure that the customers are willing to talk and are talking to us in a, let's say, in a very honest manner. Right? I don't know what impression you had of this paper, but I still think, although it's written in a simple way, it's more like an essay. We don't see it's not an academic paper, one of those that you see that McKenna went to the field and did very structured research in order to get to his conclusions, right? He's talking there out of his experience as a marketing person. I think that it's still 25 years later. I'm still sure that this is one of those papers that if you print and if you take to any CEO in any organization, they will say, if they're enlightened, they will say, yes, I have already realized that. And that's what we're doing, right? Okay, he's 25 years behind, but that's, and in many cases, they may say, thank you very much for bringing me that kind of vision, because we still don't do things that way. Okay. Any other impressions about this paper? Anything that you would like to comment, add? Any other ideas? There's one more thing that just occurred to me now is McKenna talks about time to market and time to acceptance. And he claims that when we build the dialogue, we end up having the time to acceptance match the time to market, which means customers are already being prepared to accept our product, to understand and accept our product even before it is available to be bought. So he foresees here many opportunities of involving customers in discussions that happen at previous stages of a product. Even what the product is still being conceived, even during conception phase or during the design phase, he thinks that customers could and should already be involved, because they will have ideas that will polish and fine-tune whatever is being done internally. Right? The open innovation movement that Chesbrough, this professor at Berkeley, at least started or at least has been one of the main the people that have talked more about it. It is sort of a result of this, right? When you're talking about open innovation, you're talking about involving people that are not inside, are not part of the organization, to help you somehow think how you can do things better. You're building the dialogue, not necessarily and not only with customers. Customers are very important in open innovation, but also with other people that are not your customers, but may also have good ideas, so include them in the dialogue as well. Okay? And he claims that traditionally, the products got to the market, appeared in a supermarket shelf, for example, before customers were ready to buy it, because if it's a new product, customers would still not understand what it was for. So they required, after the product was on the shelf of the supermarket, that required them to put a lot of advertising effort into making sure that people bought it. and that extended time to acceptance to further after time to market. But if you are able to involve customers, for example, if Levi's involves customers even in the manufacturing process, when the product gets to the market, in this case, it doesn't even get to the market, it gets directly to the customer's home, right? That's something that is worth doing. By the way, I had said that Levi's concept didn't work in the 90s. For many years, I was trying to track what was the reason for that. At some stage, I even had the opportunity of talking to a Levi's person in one of my visits to California, and he wasn't very enlightening either. He didn't tell me exactly what had happened. My impression is that probably they stopped that program just 1 or 2 years after they started it, not because customers were not willing to cooperate. Even if customers thought that paying $10 more for jeans that were customized, even if that was the case, probably it would be cheaper for Levi's to say, okay, I'll sell it for exactly the same price. I need the information. I am buying the information. It's almost like stopping someone at the street for a survey and asking, are you willing to talk to me for half an hour for $10? Right? People are probably going to say, no, my time is worth more than that. Right? But so that was cheap. If they were charging $10 more, it was because they had already understood that customers thought that the added value was even more than that. So that was not the problem. And even if it were the problem, they could fix it because it was still, the information was worth much more. I believe that the problem was with the distribution channel. The way that they collected the information about their customers was with the cooperation of the retailers. So let's say you go to a retailer shop to buy jeans, and they say, look, Levi's has this new way of doing things. I measure you up here, we include this data in the system, and you get the jeans directly from home. Of course, the customer would get excited about that, or could, but the retailer after a while would say, what's going to happen to me if this becomes the trend? If every company decides to sell directly to the end customer, I'm out of business. And besides, people that come here to buy Levi's jeans, I end up selling them socks, tennis shoes, a t-shirt. If they don't come to my shop because Levi's sells directly to them, I'm, again, out of business, or at least I have less business. So even if Levi's had an agreement with those retailers, and I'm sure it did, telling them that whatever they sold directly to the customer, the retailer would still get a commission, even then it was probably not to the best interest of those retailers. And I believe that was probably the problem back then. And I believe that because this was the problem that IBM, Compaq, and HP had when they saw Dell selling directly to the end customer. And they thought, well, this is a good idea. But then they realized that they sold 99.9% of their computers through traditional retailers. And if they started selling, at least in a more aggressive way, through the web, that would go against the business of their traditional business partners. And of course, those partners wouldn't be happy about it and would probably say, well, you choose. You either sell the 0.1% that you're selling online and give up on the 99.9% that we are selling through our hard work, or you stop doing that online and keep doing it with us. No wonder those companies were never, they saw Dell becoming each time more aggressive in selling online, and they were very timid. They were very shy in doing the same because of their channel conflicts. So this is an issue that is always important when we talk about information systems. Information systems usually allow us to do things differently than we used to do in the past. But many times it's difficult for us to do it differently because we have already structured our business in a way that now it's difficult to go in a different direction. Remember when we were talking about one of those Venkatraman papers and we were talking about the revolutionary uses of IT, I said, well, Venkatraman was thinking that this would happen inside the organization. 25 years later, I say that what I see is that the revolutionary uses of IT usually happen in startups, in companies that were not in a specific business and that get into that business simply because the companies that are there are not being able to use technology in more reasonable ways, simply because they're trapped by their own history, by their own structure, by their own culture, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right, I guess enough of McKenna. Let's have a look at Nambi-san and Nambi-san. Their paper, How to Profit from a Better Virtual Customer Environment. When I told you that I think that this paper is not as enlightening as the one by McKenna, is simply because in 2008, of course, these guys here were focused on possibilities of involving customers virtually, virtual customer environments. But in 2008, we still didn't have the smartphones around. Right? So they were thinking, everything that they were thinking here was basically on a larger screen. Right? And I believe that if they were as visionary as McKenna, they should have already been talking about what would happen in very soon, because the smartphone was around just about three or 4 years afterwards. Right? We don't see that happening here. But still, it's a very interesting paper, because although they are focused on electronic commerce or more than electronic commerce, electronic business that happens or that can happen online, I think they were too attached to the technology that was available at the time they were writing the paper. So I wish when I get to a paper that does the same sort of analysis, already thinking of smartphones, for example, I'll probably drop this out. I'll say I don't need that any longer because it's or maybe I'll keep it for history reasons. But differently to McKenna, that I say, well, all the let's say the ideas were there. This one is more like an execution paper. Some interesting things here. They let me see if I get to their model here. They say that customers can be involved in these virtual customer environments to perform different tasks. They may be involved in conceptualizing. They may be involved as product conceptualizers, which means we involve the customer very early in the process of creating a new product, and customers will come up with ideas. Right? It's interesting because when we think about these different tasks, it's the customer, the virtual customer environments that we will have to provide these customers with are different, right? For conceptualizing a product, we're not going to be using surveys, right? Because concepts relate to ideas. Ideas do not come in bullets or in questions that are for closed answers where we can't change things, right? So maybe for product conceptualizing, one good way of doing that is in a forum, in a wiki forum, for example. It has to be open. It has to allow people to talk more freely in a very unstructured way. We're still only discussing ideas. However, if we decide that we want to involve customers as product designers, then we already need to provide customers with different tools. Of course, it will depend on what our business is. What are we designing? Are we designing jewelry? Are we designing T-shirts? Are we designing trips? Are we we want to be the travel agent of the world and involve customers in helping us create products that are better suited to their needs. If this product designer virtual environment is probably going to be very focused on characteristics of the specific company or the specific organization that is doing. We should we have to provide customers with with tools that help them design the products that are simple enough for customers to be involved with. Remember, they are not specialists, but at the same time, they have to be strong enough to allow them to do it in a way that will actually support the design process. Right? Many times, customers may be involved in product testing, for example. Many here they're mentioning Volvo, Audi, and companies like that. But if we think in the software industry, the beta version of any software, which is provided for free for some people or to some people, it usually comes with also this obligation of reporting problems, and people may even not be aware that they're doing that. Sometimes nowadays systems are so we're so connected that the simple using of software may or information on when it crashes or whatever may already be what the company needs to perfect the product afterwards. In fact, in the past, only the beta testers were the ones that were doing product testing. Nowadays, for many products, we are testing the product during the whole life cycle of the product. Mainly if it's a product, again, if it's a digital product that we are using and the company is still enhancing, improving, changing, correcting, debugging. In the past, all the debugging had to be done before the software was released because there was no way, or it was very expensive to do any recall afterwards. But nowadays, any software company can already put a product with bugs because it can start sorting it out. And in fact, it turns everyone into product testers. So notice we are all now in this virtual environment of product testing products all the time. Sometimes for debugging, sometimes it's really bugs, sometimes it's just features that they want to see if we like or not. So they keep trying to see if we like, or many times they want to see if the company likes the way that we are using. So Facebook, for example, keeps trying different things and seeing how we behave based on the inclusion of a different icon or a change in the position that an icon was presented on the screen, and so on and so forth. So we are all part of the testing nowadays, right? Other companies appear there as product support specialists. The case here that the authors discuss more broadly is Microsoft and the fact that Microsoft allows users to support other users online. So if any of you has a good understanding of some Microsoft product, you may become a supporter of Microsoft products. And some of you may be thinking, why would I do that? Are they paying me any money? No, they're not paying you any money directly. But if you're a good supporter, if you support other customers, and these other customers say, hey, I like the way Alex helped me with whatever problem I had, Microsoft will know that you're doing a good job for free, and then they will say, okay, from now on, if you want to include in your business card that you're a Microsoft, I don't know the term that they use, a Microsoft solution provider or whatever, I allow you to do that. So it's almost like saying, I, Microsoft, ensure or that you know Microsoft products, and now if you want to sell your services in your area, they're probably going to be more valuable because you're recognized as a Microsoft solution provider. That's not the term, but whatever they use there. So in fact, they're paying you indirectly because you're going to be compensated by the effort that you're putting there, not directly by Microsoft, but by other people that will buy your services afterwards. This leads us to an interesting question, right? If you think of who a conceptualizer is, conceptualizers usually are not customers that get involved and help a company to build the concept of the next generation of products. They usually do that for love. They love the brands. They know. But if you're going to be a tester, you're not doing that for love. Or maybe in the past you were, when you were a beta tester, you say, yes, I want this to be it. But nowadays you do it for the convenience. Well, sometimes you don't even have a choice, right? They don't give you a choice to decide if you want to be a debugger or not. They just send you bugged software, and you have to cope with that, right? But in the case of the product support specialist, people are not going to work for Microsoft. I mean, there are crazy people everywhere, right? But in general, they're not going to work for Microsoft for love, right? There are other companies that are more charismatic, let's say. Microsoft is a very efficient company. They do their work. We buy their products, but it's not that we love the company, right? They've never positioned themselves like a company to be loved. Although Bill Gates is one of the people that have donated more money for charity and everything. That was his business afterwards. But Microsoft itself, it's there for business. And then when you're helping them, you're saying, well, this is business for me. So notice that if you're a product support specialist, you're doing that for money. I'm using here Malone's taxonomy, who says that we do things for three reasons: love, glory, or money. Right? So some of these tasks here people will do for love, others they will be happy to do for glory, and others they will do for money. In fact, these authors have a slightly different classification. It will show here that taxonomy in a second, but we'll see that it's sort of the same. Okay, and then the product marketer, who has an example of a product situation in which customers are involved through a virtual customer environment and become a promoter or a marketer of a company's products. Do you have any examples of situations in which you became a marketer for a product that you use? Companies do that all the time these days. For example, the other day I went to São Paulo and used this new alternative bus system, Uber. Do you know that? Do you know about this company? It's an Uber for buses. So you sort of check and they have buses going from city to city. It's usually, well, at least for now, it's much cheaper than going in a regular bus system. But what happened is that my daughter then said, "Oh, did you like that?" And I said, "Yes, I did. In fact, don't get directly there because I will send you an invitation, and if you click their website from my invitation, I will get a 10 reais bonus for my next trip. So you know what happened? I told my daughter, she actually took a trip with them, and I got those $10. And then she told another 3 of her friends, but she gave them the same link that I had given her. So now I have 40 reais for my next trip on Boozer. In fact, I became one of their marketers indirectly. It was not originally my intention, but that to some extent happened. And we see that happening all the time, right? Companies that try to involve their customers in becoming their marketers. And it makes sense because, of course, usually people will market products that they like. Many times they don't even have to pay you to do that. You know, if you like something, it's you tell other people about it. So this word of mouth, this spreading the news is what they claim here that could be done and can be done. And it is something that it's much more easily done if the company puts the system to help, right? So they provide me with a link that, so if anyone wants to use the system and wants to help me with 10 reais, you just tell me and I'll send you my link, and then I'll become 10 reais richer. Because next time that I go to São Paulo using this bus, it's going to I won't have to pay for that. I don't know, anyone else has examples of things like that? Hotmail. When Hotmail started, Hotmail was probably the first company to introduce this logic. Hotmail was free, right? In a time that most of us, well, I'm talking about 95 again, or maybe a little after that, in a time that most people were used to pay to have an internet provider and would pay extra to have an email account. And then Hotmail came with this free email, but whenever you used Hotmail, it would show at the footnote, this is a free email. If you also want to have access to free email, just click here. And just by introducing that at any email that any of its users had, it became the most popular email provider in many countries in the world, turning ourselves into product marketers. When we are all connected, it becomes even much more stronger, this proposition of having your own customers be the promoters of your products. We may not be as influent as some of nowadays we call them digital influencers, right? But as the digital influencers, or as the actors for the soap operas, or a big pop star or whatever. Those were the guys that we saw on TV in broadcasting times, because that was the closest that companies could get to having our own friends advertising something to us. Let's say a pop star or a soap opera actor or actress is someone who used to be in people's homes every day, right? We were familiar to them, and them saying something about a product made us feel that product was a little more credible or whatever. So advertisement used to happen that way because companies could not put our friends to advertise products to us. But there's no better way, no stronger way to convince people that something is good than having people that they trust tell them that thing is good, right? So this is why it has become so important and such a strong possibility. This is the product market. I think it's the last one. Yeah, and then we have here this interesting table. Let me see how it's showing. Yeah, it's showing sort of complete there, in which they try to tell the different kinds of, or different possibilities of customers supporting the companies. And then they have in the rows they have the nature of the contribution, the nature of the interactions, the way that interactions happen, the typical technology that they saw being used for that, examples that they could find, and here they already show the customer experience components, because they claim that, again, we do if we do things for money, love, or glory, we have to have these features embedded in the environment so that we do the work. Otherwise, we will go away, right? I noticed that they have a different taxonomy here. They say that, for example, a product conceptualizer usually gets involved, the customer gets involved in tasks that refer to conceptualizing a product because of hedonic or pragmatic reasons. Pragmatic, I would say, if I was to use Malone's taxonomy, I would say pragmatic is still money. A pragmatic benefit is a benefit that you can measure very easily. So even if Microsoft doesn't pay the product supporters directly, they have a pragmatic benefit, which is they will be seen as more professionals that should be hired, and so they will get money in a different way, right? Hedonic refers to happiness or to enjoying something. So I would qualify that as love. For the product's design, they claim that we do it for pragmatic, usability, or hedonic issues. So we already have usability here, something different. Usability could also be qualified as maybe money, because if I use something because it's easy to use or because of its usability, I want to be efficient, and efficiency is related to somehow to also to it's a different kind of pragmatic perspective. But I would, if I were using the other taxonomy, I would also say that that's money again. Product testers do things for pragmatic reasons or for usability. Where did this table come from? This paper here is not the academic, not the scientific paper, so they don't give a lot of detail on where they got the information from, but it definitely looks like if they were surveying a lot of people, and it will show in a picture that I will show right after this. Product specialists do things for pragmatic reasons, but they may also do it for sociability. Well, I claim that whoever works for Microsoft is doing that for money, for the pragmatic reason. But they say that they also found people doing working as support specialists, not necessarily for Microsoft, but for whoever they survey people here. People do it for sociability. Sociability may have something to do with glory in the other taxonomy, right? It may also have something to do with love. I understand that this taxonomy is not fit exactly, but they're saying here that you may support people or support a company through one of these virtual customer environments because you think because that's good for your social. And I agree that probably doesn't happen to in the Microsoft case, but it may happen in the open source case. That people also become supporters of other people that are using the same kind of technology, and they are doing that probably not necessarily because of pragmatic reasons. They may be doing that because they're part of a community. It's all love, money, or glory, right? Because there are lots of studies, for example, about open software community that say, well, people, they do, some people are in, sometimes they're doing that for love, because they have love, passion for that idea, for the concept of having open software or whatever. But they also may be doing that for more pragmatic reasons, because becoming a specialist in that technology, they can also sell their services to companies that are using the technology. And they also do that for glory, because, well, whoever is involved with open software wishes that one day they will appear there among those that contributed to the core of the system or whatever. And so there is a hierarchy even in the open software community, that people feel that they, by putting some effort, they may become more visible, or they may become more recognized for the effort that they put there. And the product marketer here, they claim that people do that for pragmatic or sociability reasons. This will appear in this figure here. Let me see where it is. Yeah, this is the figure that I said this is where we understand that this probably came from a survey or something. When you see these drawings here, and they have on this page the ones for the product conceptualizer and for product design, but then the next page will have the same sort of drawings for the other tasks that people can do. What we see here is that they have some metrics, right? So remember that in the table before, it said that what was really important for product conceptualization were the pragmatic incentives and the hedonic incentives. Notice that they're the ones that are closer to 80% here, and maybe 80, I don't know. Well, this graph definitely comes from some data that they don't show here. But this is where, see, for product conceptualizer, they claim that people did it mainly for pragmatic and hedonic reasons. When we come here for product design, people do that mainly for pragmatic and usability reasons. I believe that this is probably what was showing in the previous page. And if I go there for the other product testing, again, what seems to be more important here is the pragmatic and the usability reasons. For product support, pragmatic and sociability. And for product marketing, pragmatic and sociability. Well, as I said, it's an interesting. This paper is interesting in the way it supports the previous paper, and I wish, and maybe you can help me if you ever find another paper that goes the same way, but already dealing with what people do in using smartphones. I would be very happy to discuss it here in class. One thing, again, going back to the roles here that people can assume, right? Product conceptualizer, product designer, product tester, support specialist, or product marketer. Do you think that that they missed anything there? Is there any other activity that we could, in the part of the value chain, that we as customers could be involved with? And I'm asking you that because I see a very important one that they didn't mention here, never understood why, but there is at least one more column that I would include there. When anyone sees this video, that they will think that I had no class here, that I was pretending that I had students, because you're too quiet. Search for, before conceptualizing. Search for what? But this I would say that most of it would be part of the creating the concept. I don't know. No, you know, what seems really obvious that they missed here, and I can't understand how they could miss it, is the customers being put in a virtual environment to create the product. Do you have any examples in which we, as the customers, are actually the ones that produce the product, that produce whatever the company sells? You can't think of any examples of that? The company puts us in a virtual environment, and we produce whatever the company sells. Information, for example, if you think of content, there are many companies that what they sell, or maybe that's not exactly what they sell, but what they produce and what brings people in is content. Facebook is an example of that, right? If we were not including content, and we're the ones that are including content. We are the ones that are including content that is relevant to our friends. So we are actually the ones that produce whatever they are selling. YouTube, yeah, YouTube. It's even a better example, maybe, because when we're talking about Facebook, you could still say, okay, but we are not the customers. We are the pro. Yeah, there is all that mixture of what is our role there. But in YouTube, we all became movie makers. I am contributing to YouTube right now, right? YouTube is going to get more business because of this broadcasting here. We'll have, in addition to the few people that are in this class, we will have 2 or 3 more people that will watch and that will contribute to YouTube's business, right? And we're doing that for free. They're getting paid. They're getting their business happening because we are providing content. So yeah, YouTube is a very good example of that. And in this case, we are there. Of course, in a different moment, we're there as consumers. But in YouTube, it's only possible that we have consumers because we also have the producers. And the producers and the consumers are sort of the same people. Of course, there are people that produce more than consume. There are people that consume more than produce, but none of us is hired by YouTube. Right? We're all customers, or at least we're all there in this customer base. Another example of that, for example, Mercado Livre or eBay, those are also companies that what they sell is the content that we include there. So whenever we think about companies that rely on content that is created and made available in real time by users, we're talking about, a column that is not here, that is the customer as the product maker, the product manufacturer, or the product. So it's not only designing before, but also producing it. Okay, so well, I guess this is it about this paper. I don't know if you have any other comments about it, any examples that impressed you when you were reading, any other ideas? Because if you don't, what we will do is we will go to our Moodle forums for discussion. But maybe we can have a short break before that and come back in 15 minutes or something, right? Okay. Yep.